Hello everyone, welcome to Merlin's Manor. Today I'm going to be talking about a solo game I've been enjoying lately, and that game is Final Girl. Now this game has been very popular, it's been flying off the shelves even though it just came out and it's already almost sold out everywhere. But they are going to have a Kickstarter on January 11th for Season 2, and you should be able to pick up some of the Season 1 stuff there as well. Now what Final Girl is, you are basically following the horror movie trope that there is one girl that's left to face off against the killer and win against the killer in all those horror movies. And so you are playing if you get all of the games, you're playing one of 11 different final girls that they have out right now. And there's 5 different killers that you can go against, and there's even a mini expansion where you're going up against birds, like from the horror movie Birds, and it's called Terror from Above. And I might actually do a playthrough of that shortly. I don't know. Stay tuned if I do. And anyway, you can choose to start out with just the basic, grabbing one of these and going with the core box. You'll need the core box for any one of these that you're going to do, and at least one feature film. And you can take both the killer from the feature film and the final girl in the location and play that as just basic like that. Or you can take the final girl from one box, the location from another box, and the killer from another box. And so you can kind of mix and match. It's very modular in that way. You don't have to buy all of these. You can buy them by the piece there, by the feature film. You just need to make sure you have that core box and at least one feature film. And so you can mix and match these any way that you want. And so there's lots of cool different combinations that you can have. There's even a solo scenario book, if you can get your hands on that, which has a bunch of different scenarios throughout the book so that you can have lots of ways to refresh things there and follow that along. And it's got kind of a storyline that goes with each killer that goes from location to location. And so you are going to be playing on all the different locations with these different killers, with different setups, different items that start out with different cards that it has, and all kinds of different things with those solos. And so I highly recommend the scenario and lore book so that you can have lots of replayability through that, but it already has lots of replayability. And so I love the great amount of replayability. I've played it about 21 times now, and it's still all very fresh because there's so many different ways to combine. It's a fairly quick play. I find most games range between 20 minutes to an hour. Most of them falling right around the 40-minute mark for me, and so it's very quick. Setup is pretty easy as well. Let's get into a little bit about the gameplay itself. First of all, this is kind of there's a lot of luck involved in this game because a big part of the mechanic here is that you are rolling these dice, and usually at the beginning of the game you're going to start out with 2 dice, and that's going to be the main amount that you're going to be rolling early on. If you see this right here, you've got that horror track there. All those areas in the white, you're going to have 2 dice, and there's different cards that you can use, and I'll get to that in just a moment, where you can get it up to that green level, and you start rolling 3 dice. But if the horror track gets out of control and gets all the way over there to the 7th spot, then you're only going to be rolling 1 dice. Or 1 die, should I say. And so you need to be very careful about that to make sure that you get it in the right location. And there's basically 3 different things that come up on these dice. If you roll a 1 or a 2, there's no symbol there, and that means you have failed that roll. If you roll a 3 or a 4, you can turn that roll into a success by discarding 2 cards. And if you get a 5 or a 6, you get a success. And the cards that you have here, some of them they require 1 success for certain options, 2 successes for other options. A few of them actually require 3 successes for an even better option. And then there's still something sometimes that happens if you get 0 successes that you may like, for instance, if you are moving, there's one thing that says that you can lose a heart to still move 1 if you want to, or you can just take it as a loss and lose 2 time. And that's a mechanic I'll get to in just a moment. In order to get in order to get your terror level where it needs to be, or horror level, should I say, where it needs to be, you can use these cards here to roll, and if you get that symbol there that has the face with an X through it, then you will be able to move that 1 over, or 2 over in the case of the top part of the distraction there. And you see the green time symbols there, those actually refer to you getting more time. If you see the red, you're actually spending time in order to make that success happen, or the loss happen, even you still spend the time. And so time is your basically your currency in a sense in this game, and you start there on the 6 where it's blue. And as you use cards, a lot of them will use time. Some of them will add time back. There's other different things too also that will give you time. Some items give you time and different things. And so you'll be using time to do your different actions. And then whatever time you have left over, you can actually spend to buy new cards. You start out with 6 cards, and if you see in the bottom left-hand corner there, it starts out with the starting cards are all 0 time. You can get these back for free, but you can't get them back immediately after you play them, and so you have to wait 1 round before they go back in the shop. Same with any of the other cards you buy. Then other cards like this one right here cost 4 time, and so you need to make sure that you have 4 time if you're going to buy that. You can also discard cards before you go into the buying stage to be able to get 1 time per card you discard. And so there's a lot, like I said earlier, there's a lot of luck involved in this game, but there's also a decent bit of luck mitigation that goes along too. For instance, you can get this planning card here, which if you roll no successes, you get 1 extra die, but the horror track goes up by 1. If you get 1 success, you get 2 die and 2 dice, and then if you get 2 successes, you get 3 dice for your next roll. And so extra on top of what you already would be rolling. And so that gives you a little bit more opportunities to roll successes. You also have something called an improvise, which if you get 1 success, then all 3s and 4s for your next roll are successes. And if you get 2 successes on this card, then all of them for the rest of the action phase will be 3s and 4s will be successes. And so that means basically if you get that, then you've got 4 out of 6 options will be automatic successes for you. I also mentioned earlier, if you get a 3 or a 4, you can discard 2 cards from your hand in order to turn something into a success. So that's one other way you mitigate the luck there. And final way, at least for the most part, there's some items as well, but in your general ways to do this is close call. You can get rid of this card to re-roll 1 die, or you can get rid of this card and spend 2 time to re-roll all the dice. And so that's another way you can mitigate that. I also will use these sometimes just to, if a 3 or 4 comes up, as their cheap fodder for discarding because they only cost 1 to get, and you don't necessarily use them for your actions, and you just basically use them if you need to change something and need to re-roll. Rather than re-roll, sometimes I'll just use these if there's a 3 or a 4, because that's a sure if I get rid of 2 of those that I will get that, whereas a re-roll, you may or may not get what you want. And so those are just a few ways to mitigate that. There is, like I said, a lot of luck involved throughout. Even your movement requires you to roll successes. So everything you do in this game just about requires rolling dice to get a success. There are a few weapons that can attack without doing a horror roll and a few other things, but just about everything you're going to be doing is going to require that dice roll. And so you're going to want to try and, first of all, make sure you're keeping that horror level high so you get more dice, using some of these other mitigations here. Get some items sometimes that mitigate that. Some items will help you do more damage. Some items, all kinds of different things that the items do. And so you want to be doing some search actions to be able to search in certain places to do that. Another big thing you're going to be doing is there's a bunch of victims on the board, or at least potential victims on the board, that if they are able to, if the killer is able to get them, then it's bad. It increases the bloodlust meter, which makes them faster, attack harder. The horror level at certain points will go up, and sometimes there's other things with certain killers as well that happens more often once you start raising that up, and so you want to be very careful about that. You also have tarot cards you're going to be going through, and once that tarot card deck's gone, then you're going to reveal a finale card, which is going to make them come after you a lot quicker and harder to try and finish you off. And so you want to try and be mindful that you only have 10 rounds before that's going to happen. Sometimes less if there's no victims on the board. They'll have you skip a card. And so you want to be careful that you are doing these. You also want to be saving victims, because if you save victims, you get some benefits. And I'll go ahead and show you this card right here real quick. This is your final girl card, and it starts out on this side. And every time you save a victim, you get to put them on this card and get that benefit. And then once all the different spots on the card are completed, then you flip your card over and you get a special benefit. And this is Lori's card, and she actually allows you to get an extra piece of damage every time you attack an enemy in your square, or actually every time you hurt an enemy in your square. That includes for retaliate and things like that as well. And so it gives you an extra damage. And then also, if you save more victims, she gives you extra time every time you save a victim. And so you're going to want to be trying to save those victims both for their benefit and also to get that card flipped in order to get the ultimate power there on the other side, and as well as to keep that bloodlust track from going up from Hans or one of the other killers getting to them first. And so I want to go over now some of the components. The component quality in this game is very good. You're going to have these wooden meeples if you get just the core box but there's also a miniatures that you can get, a miniature set that gives you miniatures for all the killers and well, this is the final girl, and also the killers all have miniatures if you want to spend about 20 to 25 bucks for that. I haven't felt the need to get that. I enjoy just using these for now. May or may not in the future, if I see a good sale, get those, or maybe if they're on a good deal on the Kickstarter that comes up, I might get them. I don't know. Anyway, you get, but these components are really good as far as what they are. The dice, I actually like the way the dice roll. They're a little bit bigger than your typical dice, and they kind of roll a little differently, but in my dice tray, they kind of have a nice bounce to them. And so I like that. It seems a little more randomized when they have a little bit more of a bounce and roll to them. So I've enjoyed those dice. The cards are good quality. The boards, and one thing I think is really cool, and I'm going to go ahead and get into one of these real quick, is the box also is the board. And so you take this off, and you've got, well, this is the killer's board. And this top bit right here, you're going to want to fold it back slightly, gently, and it'll sit flat. Some people have been complaining that it kind of tips up a bit on them, but you just have to give it a nice little bit like that when you first get it out, and then it stays nice and flat. And here's that bloodlust track that I was talking about. Every time somebody dies, this goes up. When you see this symbol, your horror is going to go up. This releases a dark power, which is not good, and so you want to try and keep that from happening for as long as you can. And then I'll show you this here, and that's the Creech Manor board, and that's actually a house. Some of them have some outdoor. Some of them are outdoor boards, some are indoor boards, and some have a little bit of both going to them. And so, and it's basically you just take that off and it becomes the board. So I thought that was kind of cool. It's a good way to save some space, as well as I just think it's kind of a cool concept there that they went with. And so you get all these, and then this is the little tiny expansion for the birds, Terror from Above. Nice little expansion. It comes with these little bird tokens, and you got one bird, or you flip it over and you got 3 birds, and you don't want them to have 3 birds on every space or you lose, and so they're going to be slowly putting more and more birds out. Each one has a different thing to it, a different way that it plays. For instance, the one I was just showing you, the Poltergeist, this killer, you actually don't attack this one. You actually have to try and avoid the Poltergeist as much as possible and find Carolyn, who is in one of the item decks, and escape with Carolyn. And so that's kind of a cool concept. You can't actually even attack this person. You want to try and focus on just kind of finding Carolyn and getting out of there. And then let me get all these off of here. And these are your different victims. These are the special, the orange, blue, and white are special victims. Yellows are your regular victims. And you want to try to save and whatnot. And so here we've got Camp Happy Trails, which is Hans, which is kind of takes place at a camp, kind of reminiscent of Jason. And this one's probably the least complex one. And so I'd highly recommend getting Camp Happy Trails and with Hans and playing this one first, because it's not going to add as much complexity, and so you'll be able to better handle what's going on there for your first game. This one here is Frightmare on Elm Street, and I think you can guess what that's based off of on your own. And you're basically has the mechanic of he only attacks you when you are asleep until later on in the game when some of the finales I think allows him to attack you anytime. I haven't played it, but a couple times. I can't remember if all of them do. I don't know if all of them do that or just the certain ones. But generally, until you fall asleep, and some tarot cards make you fall asleep, or you can choose to take a long or short rest and fall asleep on your own. Until you fall asleep, though, you can't attack him. He can't attack you, and so you kind of have to go against him on his own terms at that point. and adds some cool features as well as you're trying to. You have to use convince cards to get in there and to get into people's houses if there's somebody in the house, to be able to search and be able to save them. You have to be able to convince them to let you in first. So that's kind of cool. Adds a little mechanic there. I've got Geppetto, and this is at Carnival of Blood. You're kind of at a carnival. They add some traps and different things as well in the item deck. Lots of cool things with that. I like the setup of that carnival. It's kind of cool. And then we got this one, which is my arch nemesis. I can never remember this person's name. Is Inkenyamba, and it's on the Sacred Groves. And this one adds all kinds of complexity. This is going to be the hardest one you're going to play probably, both from a complexity standpoint and from a winning standpoint, because it adds a couple tracks that really ramp up the difficulty, and you have to try and keep that down in order to keep bad things from happening to you. And so it's a lot more complex, and things can go south really fast in that one. So I would highly recommend, first of all, Hans, both for difficulty level and complexity. And then one of my other favorites is the Frightmare on Maple Lane. That one just has some interesting mechanics, and it's not too difficult to me. It's kind of a good second game. Third, I'd say either between Geppetto or the Poltergeist one, which I've kind of got over there right now, but either one of those is kind of probably the next most difficult as well as complex. It doesn't add a whole lot of complexity, just kind of a different way of playing and a little bit harder in some ways, but at the same time, it depends on what happens as well. And then, like I said, the hardest one, the one I wait on and hold off on until you've gotten used to everything, would be the Sacred Groves one. And so that's just kind of how I have seen it as I've gone. The one that's most frustrated me the most is that Sacred Groves one. I even lost pretty hard when I went to Sacred Groves with Hans in the campaign. And so even when it wasn't the killer from that one, the level itself was very difficult. And so that's the basics of the game and kind of my thoughts on each one of the boxes. I hope you have enjoyed this look at the game, that may have encouraged you. And if you are interested in the Kickstarter, go ahead and check that out January 11th. And you should be able to get Season 1, I would assume, as well as Season 2 is going to reveal 5 new killers and locations that you will be able to get. And so I'm excited to see what that has in store. Again, if you've enjoyed this video, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to see more videos, and I will catch you in the next one.